Tonight, what's next after today's public shaming of the most powerful men behind Penn State? An in-depth investigation leads to damning criticisms of the late football legend Joe Paterno, the former president, and two of his top deputies, accused of total disregard of young boys who were sexually assaulted. As convicted child rapist Jerry Sandusky sits behind bars tonight, we ask who else should go to jail for this obscenity? And I'm taking your call. Plus, a woman wakes up to a terrifying sight. A strange man lumbering into her bedroom. A county worker says he was just there to hand her a citation for an uncut lawn. In her bedroom? She joins me live tonight to explain why she wants him prosecuted. Plus, we'll show you the astounding video. Plus, unbelievable details revealed about neighborhood watch shooter George Zimmerman's past. You won't believe what his ex-fiancée told cops. Stories that claim pushing and kicking and other violence long before Zimmerman gunned down unarmed teen Trayvon Martin. We'll have all the new details tonight. And in tonight's shocking video of the day, is this excessive force, or was it justifiable for cops to taser somebody who was allegedly jaywalking?
The most powerful men at Penn State failed to take any steps for 14 years to protect the children who Sandusky victimized. Created a dangerous situation for other unknown, unsuspecting young boys who were lured to the Penn State campus.
Jerry, what do you have to say about the verdict?
To put the interests of a image or publicity or the branding or the football program ahead of protecting children, the report is crystal clear that that's exactly what happened.
There's no indication anybody spoke to him.
There was a corrosive atmosphere at Penn State, and Mr. Paterno was in the center of it.
He said, I know my father did not know Jerry was a pedophile. He said, we wish that he would have followed up more aggressively.
The facts are the facts, and Mr. Paterno did nothing to protect young men.
It clouded their judgment, and money was like a drug, and they needed another fix. And they had to keep this going in order to keep that money coming.
Tonight, explosive new information coming out about the child sexual assault cover-up at Penn State University. And tonight, we're asking, how deep does this scandal run? And who else should go to prison? Jane Velez-Mitchell coming to you live. We all saw that, the public cheering, as a jury found former Penn State football coach Jerry Sandusky guilty on 45 counts of child sexual abuse. 45! Jerry Sandusky sits in jail right now as we speak, waiting for sentencing. He's expected to spend the rest of his natural life behind bars, but hauling Sandusky off to jail is only the first step. Tonight, investigators say they uncovered what looks like a massive cover-up by at least 4 bigwigs at Penn State. An internal review led by the former head of the FBI reveals a, quote, total disregard for child rapist Jerry Sandusky's victims. Listen to this.
Our most saddening and sobering finding is the total disregard for the safety and welfare of Sandusky's child victims by the most senior leaders at Penn State. The most powerful men at Penn State failed to take any steps for 14 years to protect the children who Sandusky victimized.
Wow, powerful words. The investigation uncovered those 4 men, former Penn State President Graham Spanier and his 2 right-hand men, Gary Schultz and Tim Curley, plus late football legend Joe Paterno, knew of complaints that Sandusky was violating little boys on school property, and that they decided the, quote, humane thing to do was to sweep it under the rug for 3 main reasons. Listen.
Stated reasons by Mr. Spanier, Schultz, Paterno, and Curley for not taking action to identify the victim and for not reporting Sandusky to the police or child welfare are: 1, nobody told them it was sexual conduct. 2, Sandusky should be treated humanely.
What do you think about this alleged cover-up? Who else should go to jail? Call me. 1-877-JVM says, I want to hear from you. 1-877-586-7297. Straight out to Penn State University graduate and noted criminal defense attorney and child advocate Brian Claypool. This is a withering 276-page condemnation of the men who ran Penn State at the time. Jerry Sandusky used Penn State sports facilities to lure kids who he then molested. What struck you about all of those 276 pages most? What was the bombshell for you?
Jan, the bombshell for me was this litany of emails between Spanier, Schultz, and Curley, where they collectively put together a plan where they were going to intentionally conceal, cover up, and not tell anybody at all about Sandusky and his propensity for abusing kids. And in my opinion, that is criminal in nature, and all three of those individuals need to be charged with conspiracy to commit child endangerment. They had an opportunity to stop this monster. They did nothing about it because they were worried about money and the revenue that football program was bringing in for the university.
Well, as you mentioned, the scathing report says this wasn't a one-time hush-hush, that these Penn State leaders allegedly communicated many times, including through emails, about what should be done about Sandusky. Listen to this.
The evidence clearly shows, in our view, an active agreement to conceal, and I think it would be up to a grand jury and a law enforcement officer to make decisions whether it meets the elements of criminal offenses.
All right, I want to go out to Sarah Ganim, who won a Pulitzer Prize for her reporting on this. She's from the Patriot News and an HLN contributor. Now, Sarah, two of the officials, Tim Curley and Gary Schultz, are set to stand trial for allegedly failing to report Sandusky's crimes and lying to the grand jury about what they knew. But what about former Penn State president Graham Spanier? Even though he comes up frequently, he is not charged with anything. What is the backstory there on these emails and Spanier's involvement?
Well, Jane, the backstory is that these emails were not found as part of the criminal investigation. They were actually dug up by this internal investigation by former FBI Director Louis Freeh's team. He shared them with the criminal investigators. The criminal investigators couldn't get them, couldn't get through into Penn State's tech, and could not get these emails out by themselves. Now, there is still an ongoing grand jury investigation at the state level. There's also a federal investigation, a federal criminal investigation, along with a Clery Act investigation, an NCAA investigation. There's a whole bunch of investigations still ongoing. So I think that this report, even though it doesn't have direct criminal implications, could lead to or assist in other criminal investigations. Louis Freeh said that he had been discussing their findings with other investigative agencies, and he said he turned over those emails immediately as soon as he found them. He said that he found them to be the most important pieces of evidence in the case and immediately gave them to investigators with the with the Attorney General's office. That's where the grand jury it was convened.
Well, you know, Sarah, we've got some of these, and I want to read a couple of them. One of Sandusky's victims testified that when he was a child, Sandusky bear hugged him and made him feel violated when they showered together. Now, a slew of emails allegedly show the Penn State leaders were aware of this 1998 incident. In just one email 3 months later, then athletic director Tim Curley allegedly writes, anything new in this department? Coach is anxious to know where it stands. Coach. Okay, Joe Paterno? Then Vice President Gary Schultz allegedly replies, the public welfare and police met with Jerry on Monday and concluded there was no criminal behaviors and the matter was closed as an investigation. I think this matter has been appropriately investigated, and I hope it is now behind us. Tanya Acker, attorney, that was 14 years ago. Are these emails the smoking gun that will likely be used in the trial against two of these men, Tim Curley and Gary Schultz?
Well, they certainly, Jane, will be very persuasive evidence because, again, we have to remember we're not just talking about the common sense moral obligation that people have when they have information that children are being harmed or violated. There is a federal law, the Clery Act, that says that if you're a university and you are getting federal money and federal dollars, which Penn State is, those university officials have an affirmative obligation to disclose crimes that are taking place on that campus. So the notion that you can have these sort of slipshod internal proceedings where people are like, I don't think anything's really going on, or, you know, they can brush things under the carpet. That is not okay. If you get federal money, you have an obligation to disclose those crimes, and that did not happen here.
Now, you could see that this was the rioting that occurred after Joe Paterno was fired in the wake of the scandal, and he later tragically died only recently. You know, when all this first broke, Joe Paterno spoke out and said that he did everything he could. Listen to this from the Washington Post, and then we'll analyze.
And then I called, you know, my superiors, and I said, hey, we got a problem, I think. Would you guys look into it? Because I didn't know, you know, I had never had to deal with something like that. I didn't feel adequate.
Yeah, but this report says the opposite, that this wasn't I did everything I could or I went to the right authorities. It's basically saying these guys did not do that. As a psychotherapist, Robbie Ludwig, what would be the motive behind not taking action?
It was a determination based on who's important and what's important. And also, there was an intellectualization going on. Whatever incident was going on privately, it had nothing to do with football. Football was his job. He had to ensure that they had that Penn State had a successful football team, and that's what Joe did. But clearly, you have to care about other people and what's going on. It's not okay to close your eyes and say, I don't know what to do. That's not okay anymore.
Well, the irony of all this is that I think it was even in the report, or observers have said it's all about avoiding bad publicity. Brian Claypool, the whole irony of this is that it was all about making Penn State look good, and they were afraid if they revealed this, allegedly, that it would make Penn State look bad. And how bad does Penn State look tonight? Right.
Hey, Jane, I'm a graduate of Penn State, and Joe Paterno spoke at my National Honor Society event many years ago. And I'll tell you, I'm ashamed of how this university, the last 10, 15 years, handled this. Joe Paterno had an obligation to report this. Make no mistake about it. And there is now an inconsistency. If you go through this entire file, it's possible that he committed perjury as well. Because Curley's email in 1998 mentions a discussion with Paterno about the victim in 1998. Joe Paterno at the grand jury hearing said, I didn't know anything about it. Now, the big problem here is that we need to prosecute the leaders of institutions for this criminally if we are going to make any monumental change in this country. This is bigger than Penn State now. We've got the Miramonte scandal I'm involved in. You've got the Catholic schools in Philadelphia. We need change, and this is a stepping board to do it. But I will tell you,
Brian,
money,
are you saying
reality.
that you feel the former president of Penn State, Graham Spanier, who has not been charged with anything in this case, should be charged or not?
You bet, and I'll tell you why. He sent an email, and he signed off. He signed off, Jane, if you can believe this, on allowing Tim Curley to go have lunch with Jerry Sandusky and talk to Jerry and say, hey, Jerry, are you gonna be okay? You're not gonna do this anymore. And if you tell me you're not, then we're not gonna report you. That's like going to a pathological drunk driver or an alcoholic and saying, hey, I'm not gonna charge you with drunk driving, but just assure me you're not gonna go drinking anymore. Are you kidding me? That's taking the law into your own hands, and it's throwing kids under the bus. He needs to be prosecuted criminally because he had an opportunity to stop this monster, and he didn't do it, and he needs to pay the price and the consequences.